Okay. Hello, everyone. Back to another Malone 10K podcast. I'm here with the lovely Stevie Hight. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thanks.
That's well. That's well. I wanted to ask you, when you were a child, what was your biggest dream?
I think my biggest dream was probably always to work with animals, actually. I was always outside. I rode horses as a young child. I loved all the animals. It's always my biggest dream.
Question. So, was that something you were pursuing when you were going through school? Was it...
I did, yeah. I was pre-vet for a long time when I first started.
Okay, that's cool. That's cool. I want to ask you, did you have a great childhood?
A great childhood?
Mm-hmm.
I did. I had a great childhood. We all face our adversities. My parents divorced, but I was always supported and well cared for and well loved.
That's good. That's good. Have you always wanted to help kids?
I think I didn't know I wanted to help kids until I was about halfway through college. I met a little boy who lost his dad. And until that point, I just wanted to be a veterinarian.
Mm-hmm.
But and that happened, and I was close to his family, and I ended up working with him and using horses, which was always my great love.
Right.
I used horses to kind of help him process his emotions, deal with his symptoms of ADHD, and I think that's where my passion for children started. I always liked kids, but I didn't know that I wanted to work with kids until I worked with him.
That's cool. I wanted to ask you, if that's the thing that changed, what helped you get through college, and why did you go for your master's?
Well, my initial response is my grandma's cooking got me through college. But
Right on.
Yeah, I lived with my grandma all the way through half of my bachelor's, all of my master's, all my PhD. So I got to be her official taste tester for Thanksgiving, and it was always the best thing. But besides that, I don't think I really had like that typical college experience. I didn't go hang out with people. I rode horses. I rode on the ranch horse team, and so that was kind of the thing that was my that kept me focused, kept me grounded all through college, was that. And then I had a few really good professors. I had a really great graduate, the chair for my dissertation, and he was excellent. I worked with him all the way through my PhD. So
That's cool. I want to ask you, was it a hard switch to go from working with animals to working with kids?
No, it wasn't hard at all. Actually, I mean, they require, I feel like, a lot of the same traits, the patience, the compassion. Children and animals are similar in the same ways, and not to minimize children, but I mean, you teach them the same way that you teach animals. So, like, behavior modification is kind of
Correct.
the same. It's very interesting. It's a very interesting job. I get to talk with lots of really interesting kids that have all kinds of different backgrounds.
Is it what you thought it was going to be?
This job? Honestly, I never thought I would work with teenagers. I always wanted to work with little kids. So, no, I never really thought about it. I never thought that would be the case. I worked at a school. Before that, I worked at a state supported living center, but most of my training is with young children. Most of it's with sexual trauma. So that was kind of always my thing, working with kids that had been sexually abused, and now I work with kids who have done the sexual abusing. So it's different.
Whenever you're working with, when you're trying to help the kids and everything, I wonder, how do you have the patience with kids that are unaware that the things that are going on mentally are outside of their control?
So the kid's brain's different, we know that, right? And they don't always have that insight like we would, but I think it's important with kids, especially any population, but with kids especially, to kind of meet them where they're at. I've even working here within juvenile justice has been kind of eye-opening for me in that area, because I've met kids here and learned so much more about different lifestyles than the one that I have or the one that I grew up in. So just being able to stop and to kind of, once again, put yourself in their shoes, use a little compassion, empathy, and learn where they're coming from, what their life is. Because when I'm talking to a kid about coping with anger at school, they may not be there yet. You know, I may have to back up and figure out how to make sure that this kid eats breakfast.
Right.
You know, so it may be more of a multi-systemic, working with the family, maybe calling the school and lining up some way to make sure this kid, even though their parents bring them to school late, somebody holds them a breakfast tray. And so it's just really stopping where you're at and figuring out where they are and moving towards them, because sometimes they're not ready to come to you yet. You know, they're not.
Right.
They don't realize or recognize that there's a need for change.
Okay, that's a good answer. Do the dynamics of family households have effect on the kids, like single parent, foster, and adopted kids?
I think so. We deal with lots of single parent families. We deal with some of the kids that are in CPS custody or have been in CPS custody. My mind immediately goes to a kid that has been in and out of some CPS custody and just feels that abandonment, you know, from his parents. And sometimes the parents are doing as best they can, you know, it's just life circumstances. But I know there's an abundance of research about the fatherless households and the impact that that's having on our kids. So it definitely has a huge impact, the family dynamics. I mean, that's where they spend the majority of their time.
Like, separate the problem from the kid to try to help the kid.
I think trying to understand where it came from helps me a lot. Every single kid that I've worked with that's committed a sex offense was either sexually molested as a young child themselves, or they were exposed to pornography at like 6, 7, 8, like really formative years. And so just understand there's always a reason. And I think a lot of people are really fast to pin it on the parents, you know, like, golly, that mom must, you know, she must just be a piece of crap. Well, no, like she's not. She's doing her best. I mean, she doesn't, there's no class, you know, when we're pregnant, that how to parent a teenager, you know, like nobody tells us how to do this. We're just doing our best. And like, I don't think that she was probably ever given much of a chance either. So it's kind of a generational thing. It's not the parents, though. I mean, sometimes it's the parents. Sometimes there's really crappy parents.
How do you approach a child with childhood traumas and they don't know how to process it?
So the treatment modality that I'm most familiar with for trauma is trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy. I was very into that when I was in graduate school. I did a practicum in the counseling clinic every single semester. I always handpicked my clients. They were always children that had experienced trauma. So I got a lot of training in that treatment modality. And then I go to a lot of different trainings now, conferences and such that have specific sessions on trauma-informed care, which is a big deal, especially in juvenile justice and school systems and stuff right now. So we do lots of talking about trauma-informed care, and that's more of a systematic approach. You know, of course, we as a counseling team here practice that, but we also try to teach it to the other staff, and it's more systematic. Well, I think trauma is different for all of us, you know, like we know what the definition of trauma is, but trauma, it's how it affects us. It's not necessarily the events. So I think just to begin with, just really listening and understanding what that child is experiencing, and being able to put yourself in their shoes and to kind of get in the mindset of what their experience has been with that traumatic event, as opposed to how we might react to it. I mean, I think just looking back to where some of their issues came from.
Okay.
That helps me.
Yeah, that's why I asked you about how the patients do things they're unaware going on mentally out of their control, of like dealing with trauma and stuff like that. Like that takes over years, and like you're unknowingly doing it.
Unknowingly doing what?
Like if something traumatic happens to you, like even like if like in the sense of like maybe like even like a repressed memory. That's something you just don't think about. And again, you can't think of repressed because it's repressed.
Right, yeah. Yeah, so you don't even know why you're struggling.
Like, you don't know why you have this, like, anxiety, because your mind doesn't...
Yeah, so we have to go back. And that's what trauma treatment is going back. And a lot of it is, it's kind of a form of exposure therapy, because with the kind of treatment that I use is like you start and you stabilize the kid and you make sure that they're okay, and then you teach them about emotions because kids can't identify their emotions usually. Eventually, you write a trauma narrative, and so you have to write. I mean, if they're old enough. If not, they tell and I write. But you have to write a narrative of what happened to you, and then you read it in therapy over and over, and you use those coping skills to deal with the trauma. You know, like if you're deep breathing, you know, or counting to 10 or whatever to help bring your anxiety down. You use those and you do it over and over and over, and eventually you read it to your caregiver. And I mean, so it's kind of an exposure therapy. So you have to go back though. That's what dealing with trauma is going back to the time of the trauma and dealing with that then and being able to process it and dealing with it now. So,
Right. Do you believe that kids are losing their innocence, like growing up too fast at young ages?
I do. I don't really have an answer how to stop that, but I do think that. I think that technology in our children is. I don't want to get on that soapbox because I definitely have one, but.
The floor you work.
Kids being left alone unsupervised with internet access and stuff. I mean, they're just being exposed to all kinds of things that, you know, you and I may not have been exposed to as children. So while we were outside playing, you know, a lot of our kids are inside on a tablet or a phone or watching YouTube or being exposed to drugs and pornography. And other kids are showing them stuff at, you know, even, you know, you or I might try to protect our kid from it at home, but then they go to school and other kids have technology. So they're being exposed to a lot of different things.
Do you think technology has had a huge impact on how kids grow up? I feel like a lot of kids, I feel like the thing about technology is I feel like it's becoming more and more isolated. I feel like kids are in their room more often.
Absolutely, yeah. So, yeah, they're not coming to... And their parents are, too, you know? And so it's not just the children. You know, mom or dad are sitting over and they're scrolling through their Facebook or their Instagram or whatever. So, it's not just the kids. We've kind of got to start at the top and, you know, restore that idea of having family dinners and, you know, maybe just going outside and playing and the stuff like we used to when we were kids.
Oh, right. I got like an off-the-wall question I want to ask you. How old do you think I am?
I have no idea. I would say 20-something.
26.
Yeah.
Because you were saying I was like, I've been outside maybe. I don't know. When I was younger, I used to like I don't know, when I was young, I used to catch lizards and grass.
Yeah.
I can't catch them now.
Well, no, you're out of practice.
I got scared.
You gotta get back out there.
You right?
Yeah.
You right?
How old do you think I am? Off-the-wall question for you.
Honestly, I think I'm like 32.
38. So, not so far away.
Okay,
I can still catch lizards.
You got me beat. You got me beat. I wanted to ask you, do you look at kids as your own or as kids you're trying to help?
I think that's a really good question. I think that it's a very fine line that we walk in this field because you have to look at them as your own children because you want them to be treated like your kids would be treated. But on the other hand, like I have 2 young children and I have to sometimes set this job aside and go home and refill my cup with my own children. And so I think it's a fine line that we walk. And some kids, I mean, I've had a few kids here that I can't leave them here. Like I take them home and I think about them and pray about them and hope for the best for them and try really hard for them. But eventually I have to just say, all right, I just got to leave work at work. But you want them to be treated like your kids are treated.
Right.
And you care for them that way. So.
Is it hard for you to do that?
Absolutely, yeah. And not, you know, it's just like anything. I mean, not for every single person that you work with. I mean, there are lots of kids that they have a good support system. They've made a bad decision, and that's how they end up here. But there are some kids, you know, that come through that you just, it's like they didn't stand a chance to start with, and they just kind of capture your heart.
To help have her understanding, because for one, I know I want kids. I said I want 3 of them little son of a guns. When I was younger, I said I want all boys. I said I don't want to deal with no girls. I didn't want to deal with it. I think I'd be a good girl then. That's where my issue is now.
Girls they're precious. I thought I didn't want girls either. I thought I wanted all boys. Girls are precious. Now, working with teenage girls is draining. Like, they're hard, and the things that happen to girls are atrocious. You know, like when you get a girl and she's dealing with stuff, like the stuff she's dealing with is bad. Like it's always the girls that I take home, almost always. Yeah. Actually, I did take a kid home one time, and he lived with me for 3 years. A kid from work, not this work, but my other work. So I guess I do take things home with me sometimes. So I probably should have said that, but
I'm about to say it's a very precious thing, isn't it?
yes, it was. Yeah, it was. Yeah, actually, he left. I had him for 3 years, and he left, and I didn't talk to him for a couple of years, and then I think he's 18. He came to my house the other day. He met my kids. Which was really neat. Yeah, it was really neat.
That's good. I'm happy. Let's see here. Okay, what difference have you seen over the years with kids having ADHD, anxiety, and depression?
I've read some stuff recently suggesting that ADHD is being overdiagnosed. And I probably agree with that.
In what ways?
But, well, just in that, you know, it's kind of a catch-all diagnosis for a lot of different things. A lot of times I feel like we look towards maybe ADHD instead of looking at autism or at one of the other diagnoses that kind of sometimes are masked by something like that. But I think that, like we were talking earlier about technology and anxiety and depression, like our kids they're not creating those social situations because they're more isolated because of technology. So, and technology's not all bad. I'm not knocking on technology. I think it has a lot of advantages, but I think kids they're not developing the social skills like they used to, and sometimes isolating themselves, which leads to anxiety and depression. You know, like we know that, so it makes sense. So yeah, for sure.
I want to ask you, what can parents do when their kid come home to help them better understand? Wait, hold on, I asked that question wrong. What can parents do when their child comes home to help the kids do better for themselves? Like when they come somewhere like this and they get out, what can parents do to help influence them, to push them to keep doing better?
I think just being supportive of them and of this. I mean, you mean once they leave a detention center or they're on probation or something like that? I think being supportive and in their child, you know, realizing that their child has made a bad decision, but they're not bad, of course. You know, we don't want to shame anybody, but if they're in trouble, they're in trouble, and we have to face what they're up against. And so, I mean, not up against, really. That's not a bad way, not a good way to put it, but they have to be able to face their consequences of their action. And so, you know, some of the kids that I work with, I think we have better success when the parents also hold them accountable. You know, it's not us against the family. It's us working with the family. So we really have, working here especially, we have a great team atmosphere. And, you know, we have an entire mental health team. I'm a psychologist. We have some counselors. We have a drug and alcohol counselor. A great team for as far as mental health goes. But we have also a great team of juvenile probation officers. So every single one of us work as a team. We're kind of on a team, different kinds of teams, but a team. So just being able to, part of our team is the child and the other part is the parent. And so we need the parents to all be on the same team. And it can't just be us holding the kids accountable. The parent also, if they hold the kids accountable, that's when we're going to be able to change what's going on in their lives. So just holding them accountable, being supportive, maybe even seeking out services for themselves, because these kind of things don't typically, you know, juvenile justice involvement doesn't really happen in a vacuum. You know, usually there's some kind of warning signs or triggers or something's going on. I mean, and almost every parent that I've spoken to will tell you that, like, you know, they noticed their peer group changed, or they found out maybe their child has started smoking marijuana, or even just smoking cigarettes, or so maybe just understanding that sometimes the family dynamics are not always appropriate at home. So maybe being able to seek out services for themselves, whether that be counseling, going to the gym, whatever they need to help them kind of get their lives together too. And we have here at Juvenile, we have services for families. It's not just for the kid. We can provide parenting or family services as well. So we have a post-adjudication facility. Did my supervisor talk to you about that?
About the what?
About our post-adjudication, like kids that have already been, what adjudicated means?
No.
So in the adult system, you're found guilty or innocent. Here it's true or not true, and that's the adjudication phase of it's the sentencing. So no. Hold on, let me start over. I'm not a forensic psychologist. Did I tell you that?
You are, you're not?
I'm not. No, I'm a school psychologist. So when I applied for this position, I met my supervisor and I talked about all the stuff that I'd done in the schools and all the trauma research and trauma work and stuff that I'd done. And I think that's why I got this position, but not because I was a forensic psychologist. So all of the forensic jargon, I'm learning it. And I think I know it pretty good now, but so adjudication, just for your knowledge, is like when they say that they did or didn't do it, and then disposition is when they are sentenced. So it's like they're sentenced to probation or they're sentenced to TJJD. So we have kids that go to their A&D hearings and they're disposed to our rehabilitative facility, which is a post-adjudication facility. And those kids stay here. It's a 12-bed facility where they're offered, or not offered, given family, mental health treatment, individual sessions, drug and alcohol abuse treatment. We have a vocational program, and so they do a half-day school here at our facility, and then we have a big nice shop. They go out and they work. They do small engine repair, welding, carpentry, horticulture. So they teach them some kind of skills, get them some different certifications. So we have that here for 12 kids, and we also take kids out from other counties, so that kids come here and are placed here for 6 to 9 months. We also have 4 licensed professional counselors and a drug and alcohol abuse counselor here as well that deal with our probation kids. So we offer drug education classes. We have like a drug intervention classes, anger management. We have a parenting class. We do sex offender treatment, and then just general mental health counseling. I do the psychologicals for our county for the kids. I do all of our psychologicals, which just involves the testing and then the mental health interviews.
Why do you believe mental health isn't as focused on as it should be?
Well, I think it's the focus on mental health is growing.
It is.
So, and I think that's helping. But it's hard. I think it's harder for people to see, and it's harder for people to understand, because you can see that a kid is behaving inappropriately. You can see a tantrum,
right?
But you don't always. They won't always express to you what's behind it. If they're sad because their parents had not done drag out last night, like they're not a lot of, especially young children, they're not going to tell you that. So, and I think maybe that contributes to it. Just it being harder to understand and harder to identify. It's kind of harder. It's harder for us to put our fingers on mental health as opposed to your physical health. Someone can take your temperature and know that you have a fever, but we can't all identify our emotions to tell you that we're sad or that we're that we're grieving something or we're angry. So,
what other methods do you have that will better the system where it's not a revolving door?
I think that early intervention is best, of course. Before I worked here, I worked for a school district, and they did a really good job I guess I was on the team too. We did a really
Right.
good job of identifying kids that needed early intervention services, access to mental health care, because kids only start here in juvenile justice when they're 10, but you have kids that are struggling when they're 4, 5, 6. Of course, bad things are happening to kids all ages. So, being able to get to them quicker and having more widespread mental health services. I'm not sure that we live in a mental health shortage area, but all of these little tiny counties around us that don't have a major town are all mental health shortage areas. So, I think that it's hard for people to get the services they need early. So sometimes when they reach us, we're the first counselor they've ever seen. So, and then we start digging as therapists. We're going to dig back into their history. Well, they were having trouble at 6. So they were having trouble as soon as they entered school. So, I think the schools are really big. They're a really big player in helping kids not end up within juvenile justice. Probably educating parents too, I think is a big deal. Making sure that parents know what to look for, and get help when they need it. Because doesn't mean that they're not doing something right. Their kid just may be struggling. So.
I understand that. I talked to Miss Hamilton. She's a teacher. Well, she's an instructor. Not an instructor. She's a mental health advocate at the judge building. She's like in the bottom floor, and being her talked about. She said that Texas is like one of the lowest places for mental health. It's Texas.
Really? Yeah.
It's one of the lowest. I want to ask you, are you happy doing your job?
Yeah, I love this job. I think this is a great job.
Every day.
Just about every day. Of course we have bad days every day, or every once in a while, but for the most part, I think this is an awesome place to work. I think we make a difference. I talked a little about working in teams. It's really nice working in teams as opposed to being like a private practitioner in the community. I've got people here to bounce stuff off of, and we've some great probation officers that I work with. The supervisor's awesome. It's a great job. And I feel like we make big differences. So.
All right. Well, one thing that I want to ask about your job is something I always wonder: when people come to your office, what vibe were you going for?
In my office?
Yes.
Just to relax. Like, this is somewhere you can come and relax and feel comfortable, and kind of. I want it to be engaging and to be inviting.
Was there any question you think I should have asked?
No, because I don't really know what direction you're headed with it. Like what's your goal?
Well, my goal was to understand your profession and the things you're passionate about and how you got there. And then when it came to the kid, I was thinking of things of like maybe what's that kid would watch this, but like someone could watch it and be like, there's some things that I can change now before they end up. I'm not saying this place is a bad place. You got to work with a team to help them.
Well, yeah, but you don't want your kid to end up juvenile justice involved.
Right.
Like, it's not a good place. Once they get here, they get the help that they need. But
right.
But you don't. Of course, you wouldn't want, as a parent or even as a child. Like, nobody wants to get arrested.
I wanted to ask you, what is your plan for the next 5 years?
I'm gonna be here. I'm gonna be here.
You're here for the long haul.
I'm here for the long haul for sure. Yeah, I love it here. So
I'm excited for you. I got one more question. I got 2. One, do you have a good work-life balance?
I feel like I do. I work 4 days a week, so, and I live a little ways away from here, so when I go home, I just go home. I do some private practice stuff sub on Fridays sometimes, but for the most part, I may stop at the gym, but when I leave here, I go home and I hang out with my family.
Last question is, what do you say is your greatest accomplishment in your career?
My career? I would just say helping kids. Like, I feel like when I started out as a psychologist, I always thought like it would all be worth it, all this 10 years of school and all of this work if I could just help one kid. And I feel like I've surpassed that. So like that's probably my professional greatest. I think I've done some research. I made it here. I mean, I have this position that I love, but I think my greatest one would be just helping kids.
I see that. Mrs Hight, that's all the question I got for you.
Awesome.
You killed it.
Thank you.
How I do?
You did good.
Thank you.
I mean, I don't know what to expect, so I think you did great.
Well,
It's the best podcast I've ever been a part of.
Well, shoot. Well, appreciate it.